Hi, today we're very lucky to have Hemadri Negi, who is the VP of Growth Marketing at MyProtein, joining us.
Hey, I'm Hem, and I'm VP of Growth Marketing, and I've got a simple action for anyone who's been pressured or asked multiple times on why are they not driving growth in a said category for the brand or the business they work in. And a simple thing that you can deliver is by testing that whether there's growth in the category. And you do so by relaxing your bids, your target, and your budgets. Because you can say all you want about the volume and the return on ad spend. That the moment you do so, your profitability or return on ad spend would drop, and your volume could increase or decrease, or you might not have volume in that category. But those are all words. No one believes words. People like proof, and rightly so. So let data do the talking for you, and you actually might be surprised as well. I had the same challenge at MyProtein for one of our categories where in a market we're seeing immense growth. No jokes, like there were brands who were doing 50 million in that category. And we're there sat, like, why are we not growing to the level that we need to or to our expectations? And to test this theory, we relaxed our bids and increased our budgets on two different platforms at the same time. Both platforms showed growth, one way more than the other. In that said platform, we relaxed the budgets and we saw our our budgets doubled and our revenue tripled. And this didn't happen overnight, by the way. So no growth happened overnight. It took us about a couple of weeks, 6 to 8 weeks, to see and measure this growth. And a brilliant thing that happened was we actually were able to raise the baseline. Now, was that expensive day to day, especially in the initial days? Yes, but we held on because, you go through a learning phase. If you're a performance marketer, you know that you go through a learning phase with any of your paid campaigns, and the time and the rules around it varies by platform, right? So we waited the learning phase out. We also fixed our foundations, right? The PDP pages and so on. And there's some other elements too. And then we scaled the spends. And then we measured it over a couple of weeks to see the impact. On the other platform, we didn't see the same level of growth. We saw some growth, but it was very temperamental and it started to impact the overall performance of the account. So we took it very slowly. We're still trying to grow it. We still see some good days and some bad days, but we're gradually increasing our share in that said category. Now, that collectively showed us that yes, there's growth to be had, but we were capping ourselves, but we're not anymore. Steal this tip because it could be that you do not see any growth in the market, right? You relax your spend and nothing grows. Now, don't just measure it by 1 or 2 days, right? Give it a couple of weeks before you are able to conclusively say that. And it could be that the data shows there is no growth, or the data shows there is growth, but it's not going to come at a said return on ad spend. And that's still a good conversation to be had with your team, with your manager, that there is growth, there is volume to be captured, but the return on ad spend needs to be dropped, or your cost of sale is going to be a bit more expensive. Now, it could be that there is so much demand that your return on ad spend is also growing. That's a win-win situation. Rarely happens. But the point of this exercise is to test the hypothesis and have conversations which are led with data rather than I've got XYZ experience, I think so. You remove those layers and you have a very informational conversation leading with numbers and actually leading with a lot of learnings. Either way, you're not losing anything. You're just gaining learnings and perspective and leading those conversations with a lot more knowledge than you first started. Try this and let me know how it works for you.
Hey, Hem. Good to be talking again. Thank you so much for sending over those tips. We obviously didn't manage to do it in person, so it's really good to be catching up. That's obviously an amazing growth story that you're able to share with us. Just got a couple of kind of follow-up questions and some quick fires. I'm really curious, the process that you went through internally to get buy-in, right? Because senior management, finance especially, can be skeptical of obviously what they're getting back, especially if it's the platform's numbers. We all know that platforms like to, they've got something to sell and they will be putting their results that you're getting in the best light. So yeah, just curious to understand sort of how you went about that and got that buy-in internally.
Hey Dan, spicy to be talking in. And I would start with it's a very interesting one because every performance marketer goes through this at some point in their career, if not multiple points, right? That we're not getting the right buy-in, or people are saying no because they don't believe in it enough or they don't have enough data points. So if you really sum it all up, it's validation. And what you have or what you're providing as a marketer is the internal validation that's coming from you and the platforms that you use to say, so for example, Google saying, I'm the best, you should invest more in me, Meta saying the same. And the point will be around external validation. So how do you build that? So there's not just one data point, but there's two or three partners that are telling the same story, where you're able to say, this is the internal validation points, external validation. And that comes through a trusted measurement partner, example, Puppy, and others such as that. And what that helps you build is that you're tracking the results on that platform, which is meant to be your unbiased view. So say if you're saying, I want to invest more in this category, can I have X, Y, Z to do so? Here's the data of the platform and here's the data of the measurement partner telling the same thing. And it's all directional, right? What we don't want to say is, because this is saying so, this is a fixed way of looking at that category. It's directional, and give that confidence to your managers, CFO, CEO, that we're going to take this direction and we're going to continue adapting based on the results we see on the ground. So there is the theory of it and then there's the practice of it, but you take it all together. So that's how I would approach it. And when I have approached this with this different kinds of validations, I would probably say the success rate on getting everyone's buy-in is, pretty good.
Great. So it's really kind of a buy-in to a framework and process before, more so than necessarily these being like, as much as we're a measurement provider and we give you good guidance, like, be the first to admit there's no one single silver bullet that tells you the absolute truth, right? So it's more kind of that
Exactly.
test and interesting. Great. Well, I guess a couple more very quick questions. Just quick fire. What's a brand that you're familiar with at the moment that's doing great marketing in your opinion?
I am a big fan of 360 marketing currently. And I, as you know, recently relocated to US, but I'm still gonna, do a UK brand that's only been 2 weeks in, is Perfect Head. So it's a matcha brand, essentially matcha in a can, and they have some various other products within that category. But I look at their marketing, their founders, they've got three founders, they're doing, constantly LinkedIn marketing. If anyone's active on LinkedIn, it's a growing space of building a personal brand. But founders I see more often are linking it back to the mission and the vision and the failures and how they're progressing the brand. So you see the real side, and it actually builds a lot of trust because you get that visibility. And then they are obviously doing a lot of IRLs. They're doing, paid marketing. So it's a 360 way of connecting with their customers. They're doing a lot of pop-up shops and events, and then they make a big thing out of it. They're posting about it, and they're probably promoting it as ads. So it's never isolated. It's all the touch points that I've noticed are saying the same thing about health, about their mission, about their vision. And I'm a big fan of that.
Amazing. And like really interesting I get it's 360 in the round, but to hear you like lead with the first thing, obviously, that struck you was LinkedIn, right? Which is quite, novel in terms of that being the first thing you think of for a consumer-led brand. Good book, Substack, or I was going to say podcast or something like that. that would be valuable resource that you're kind of got your head into at the moment for performance marketing teams?
Ooh, I would say, and stay with me on this, because in a first instance, you say, how is that relevant to performance marketing? I'm quite into The Diary of a CEO by Stephen Bartlett's podcast. And yes, someone might think they're not directly linked to, your performance marketing, PPC, paid social, or some other channels strategies. But if you think about it, we all work really hard, and we're, committed to our roles and the growth we want to drive for the business. And if we spend about 2/3 of our lives or weeks at work, and then you're also listening to podcasts, which is about strategies on platforms, it can be a little bit too much. And how I like to complement with my books and my Substack or my podcast is, what's the broader challenge I'm facing? Not the challenge at, for example, why my meta campaigns are performing. What's my customer challenge? What's my product challenge? What's the psychological brand challenge we are having with consumers? Okay, so how do we move the needle on that? And that's when I listen to Steven's podcast, even though they're not direct marketing, it's indirect customer behaviors, indirect kind of marketing, that I learn a lot about customers, like, well, let's say human psychology, people's habits. He had James Clear on the podcast recently, and he gave a lot of, and he said he sold millions and billions of copies of Atomic Habits, right? But he broke down the systems, 10 years worth of knowledge, in that podcast on how people's behaviors work. And then what I do is I learn a few things from that, and then I apply it in a different way, in a way that makes sense in the context of my world, in whether that's through creatives, whether that's through positioning of a channel, based on, the links there. And that's how I use my books and podcasts or Substack. So it's not always direct, but it keeps my mind fresh and thinking about the broader systems that cause those challenges, rather than just being focused on the tactical stuff. So I really recommend people doing that complementary, or at least suggest doing so, and see if that works for them.
Definitely. And I know, it'd be remiss of me not to mention that you also do a lot of this, right? And you read up in a number of areas, and then you share the tidbits, the cream of the insights from that stuff in a newsletter, right? So maybe you could share it on that.
Yes, so I do a newsletter called Inside the Learning Loop. And if you can tell from the name, I always think you're always in the learning loop, right? The learning never ends. It's a lifelong commitment, especially for the growth addicts out there who will get me. And the newsletter is about, I read a lot of books, and I'm very passionate about books too. And even more passionate now, so with this newsletter, about sharing those learnings. And I understand that not everyone has the time to read constantly. And nonfiction books can be quite heavy, especially after a long day of work. But everyone wants to learn and grow. And how can I share those learnings in a condensed way for a reader? So even if it's before work, after work, mid work, it's free learning from every book I read, the most impactful learnings, and examples of how you can apply it in your world, whether you're in marketing or not. And it's under 5 minutes. So do you want to read 4 weeks, or 6 weeks of, invest your time into reading a book, or you can get it from a newsletter, test it, apply it. The point is, you have always your armor to test things and see if that works in your world, without actually having to sometimes invest 6 weeks, which we don't always have.
Excellent. Well, I can testify that it's valuable stuff in there. So highly recommend, and we'll obviously put it in the when we share this on LinkedIn in the comments below. I always wanted to do that.